From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you are with us tonight. We have an important show tonight, an important show tomorrow night. We're talking about a referendum. We will, in Davidson County, be going to the polls. It's almost all but certain on July 27th. That will be Election Day. And there's going to be a vote on a tax referendum and really something that would overhaul how metro government works. There are people that really support this. There are people who are really against this. We are going to talk to both sides, and we're going to do it on different nights. So tonight, we are going to be talking with Jim Roberts. He is with For Good Government. We'll get to what that is here in a moment. But Jim Roberts is joining us via Zoom, as all of our guests do. Jim, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the chance to be here. I really appreciate it.
So July 27th, you believe this election will take place on July 27th, right?
That's what the Election Commission voted to do. They voted to place it on the ballot to let the citizens vote on these 6 amendments, and we're moving forward on that basis.
And I want to go through, there's 6 separate changes that would happen if this passes. We have an hour show. I want to go through each one of those, try and talk about some pros and cons, but give me first the big picture. The essence of what you're trying to do is what?
The essence of what we're trying to do really comes out of what we saw, a lot of citizens saw metropolitan government doing last year, which was raising a huge tax increase on the citizens at the same time that they're suffering an unprecedented pandemic. We're seeing a huge decline in businesses, and really people make money and run businesses. And to make it worse, our government did the exact wrong thing by coming in and punishing the citizens who really haven't done anything wrong. And what that did is exposed what really has been about 10 years of mismanagement by the metropolitan government. It's become clear to a lot of people that they cannot be trusted to operate without some guardrails, without some guidelines. And that's really what this does. This just sets up a few guardrails to keep the metropolitan government at least start on the right direction.
So there's 6 things. We'll kind of go through them. The big one that is getting all of the main publicity is this tax referendum portion of it, but there are other things. Now, I want to go through some things. It's led by you. You've tried to get this on the ballot for a while. It's led by you and a group called For Good Government. Right. And now this is what is written about that. Right now, we don't know who's backing Roberts or if he's the only person. Roberts says it's local people who fear retaliation. So my question is, okay, so who is For Good Government? Who is backing this effort to get this on the ballot?
First of all, everyone should be for good government. That's the whole reason we're doing this. Almost 99% of our donations have come from people from the internet, from Davidson County residents, from citizens at meetings where I have spoken. We've had a few people come forward and write some big checks, which we appreciate. That was in the early part. We are now part of a ballot initiative, and we're going to have to start doing the disclosures and all the things that the campaign has to do. We're going to follow all the rules like we're supposed to. But the people who supported this, quite honestly, are afraid of retaliation. So some of them have been hesitant. I'm hesitant to sort of disclose them for that reason alone. But I can swear to you, promise you, that every single dollar we've raised and spent has been done in Davidson County. And probably we'll keep that. Why would anyone outside of Davidson County care about this? The idea that this is funded by international dark forces is really just laughable. I wish we had that kind of money. We don't. We're just a simple countywide organization. It's coming in 50s and hundreds, and we're really appreciative of that.
So if it's Davidson County, there's some business owners in Davidson County who have been vocal. That would be a natural thought. And then you have the Koch brothers, that are not in Davidson County. Is it the Koch brothers funding this?
That is wonderful. My favorite lie that's being told, and I want to tell your listeners, to date, I've gotten 1 barbecue sandwich and 1 warm beer from the Koch brothers at a luncheon 10 months ago. They have never given a single dime to this organization. We've never asked them for any money. Have they been supportive of what we're doing? Absolutely. And a lot of other groups have. Anybody who's really for good government ideas is going to be in favor of this. These are not partisan ideas. They're not Republican ideas. They're not Democrat ideas. These are really, if you had to put them anywhere, you put them in the libertarian column. These are for good. And that was the idea. The idea was to come up with a short list of things that we could do that 80% of the people would be in favor of. And that's what we've done. The hysteria that you're hearing is coming from a very vocal minority who are afraid of the government being reined in any form or fashion. And the hysteria that you're hearing is evidence of that. And when we go through these tonight, you'll see most of these are just common sense. And yet, think of the vitriol. And I think you see that in the campaign against it, man. They are coming after me personally. They love to attack me. I'm just a simple country lawyer trying to help make my city a better place. And they're attacking me personally. At least I'm trying to do something.
There's 6 separate things on here. This would change, we're talking about the Metro Charter, right? It would change the Metro Charter, which is essentially our Constitution, if you want to look at that. And there's 6 separate changes. Let's go through them. I mean, the biggest one is obviously the tax portion. So let's talk about that first. I think that's overshadowing everything else, but talk about what it would do as far as taxes.
All right. Well, it does 2 things. And one is it will takes us back away from that 34 to 37% tax increase that was forced on us last year. It absolutely takes us back to a time period when we still had plenty of revenue, plenty of money coming in, and it takes us back to about 2019 for that budget cycle. The second thing it does is it prevents this sort of nonsense from happening again. It caps the rate that the property tax can go up to 3% a year. That means, admittedly, Metro Council can come in every year, or a mayor can propose a budget that the property tax rate increases with inflation, and he gets to do that. And if he wants to do more than that, he's got to have the people support it. He has to do it by referendum. And the mayor will have to stake his credibility on any additional amounts needed. What we've had is just mismanagement. And even council people will talk about this. We went 10 years without adjusting our property tax because no one had the courage to stand up and say, hey, this is going to lead to problems down the road. That's what we need. We need good stewardship. And this makes it easier, I believe, for them to engage in good stewardship. And so we won't have those sort of crazy gyrations in revenue that led us to this.
So you would be okay with 30% increase over 10 years, but you're not okay with a 34% increase one time after 10 years.
I would prefer it not go up that much, but it has to go up. The way our tax structure is set up, there is a rate and there's an appraisal value, and the appraisal values keep going up. Our properties are getting more valuable. And so that forces the rate down. It's a revenue neutral, and it's designed that way mainly because of dishonest things that were done in the past. But it doesn't track inflation. Our revenues, as the city needs more money as inflation increases, this will allow them to keep up with inflation. Not go on any wild spending sprees, but keep up with inflation. So I'm okay with that. And I think most people want stability in their government. Certainly I do.
Okay, so the 3% cap, that's going forward. Going forward, if this were to pass, there would be a 3% cap. And if we wanted to raise it by more than 3%, we'd have to go to the polls. Is that right? And voters would have to approve. Say somebody proposes a 4% increase, you'd have to approve that at the ballot. What is the immediate impact, though? Let's say, again, votes July 27th. It would go into effect in our current fiscal year. The fiscal year starts July 1st. I'm reading that they're saying that could produce an immediate shortfall, $40 million budget shortfall in this next year.
Well, there certainly are a lot of projections and scare stories like that. If you remember, they told us the same thing in the beginning of last year. The reason they said we had to have the 34 to 37% tax increase was because there were going to be these terrible shortfalls in 2020 year. And it turned out that there wasn't. In fact, the shortfalls never materialized. We ran a surplus last year. And we were promised also that if the surplus came in, if more tax dollars came in, there was promises that they would actually go back and lower the rate in August or September last year. Well, of course, once the government had the money, they had no intention of lowering that rate. We did not need that increase last year. And so they have plenty of money because now they have all that extra money. What this is going to force them to do is slow down the spending. I mean, it's a tragedy that we have more debt in Nashville than the state of Tennessee. That is a symptom of irresponsible governance, and we've got to stop that. And this is one way of stopping that, by slowing down this just ability to spend willy-nilly.
So if they say, if this passes July 27th in this immediate budget, we have to find $40 million, and that's going to have devastating impacts on whatever it is, police, fire, parks. You think that's not true, or you think they just need to kind of cut the fat?
One, they do need to cut the fat, absolutely. And two, I don't think it's true. I think that's exaggerated. And three, think about it. They knew this was coming. They've known this was coming for 8 months. They've known it for certain since March of this year. It's a little bit irresponsible for the mayor to propose a budget that he knows is going to be subject to a vote and will cause a problem. Let's assume he's telling us the truth, that there's going to be some shortfall. It's intentional. They've designed the budget to create a shortfall when we have this election, so that they can then come around and say, oh, we have this election, there'll be a shortfall. If they'd been responsible, they would have said, hey, this is probably going to pass. Let's adjust the budget. Let's cut spending. Let's make a rainy day fund of that $40 million that we say is going to be lost, and let's set that aside. That's what responsible governorship is. You would do that in your own household budget. But instead, it's just typical Metro. We'll spend as much as we can, and we'll cry, the sky's falling if we're $1 short. Let me tell you a little bit about the budget. The mayor's budget, I've been going through it, and it's very interesting. Would you be surprised to know that there are 30 people working in the mayor's office making over $100,000 a year? That's $3 million a year on his staff alone. Maybe he could do with a few less staffers. That might, let's say, cut him down to 10, get rid of 20 people making $2 million a year. Well, there's $2 million we just saved. Why is it always the police and the firefighters that are on the chopping block first? Why is it never the mayor's office or the council's office or any other money that we give away to non-governmental entities? It's always the police first. That always just strikes me as funny. And it's because it's not real. It's just scare tactics.
Okay, so that's kind of the headline change. Again, 6 changes. The headline changes restrict the council's power to raise the property tax, would cap it at 3%. Let's go through some of the others. Another one is recall of elected officials. It would change how recalls are done. And I'll let you explain what are you proposing here, or what's on the ballot here?
Well, we have a section in our Metro Charter called Article 15 that outlines how you recall a politician who's not doing what the people want. And it was put in there, hopefully, to be a check on sort of unrestricted power. And it turned out to be sort of a joke. It is impossible to recall anyone in this county. It is a recall provision in name only. And the politicians know that. And they don't care about it. They're not afraid of it. There is no real risk here because of the way it's set up. And this was done intentionally. It was done to create the impression that you could recall someone, but it would never be successful. We don't want to make recalls too easy. We don't want to be Greece. We don't want to be Belgium, where you can't have a stable government. But we do need to have some teeth in this provision. So I've told the way I describe it to most people, we're not making it easier. We're making it possible to recall bad politicians. Just possible. That's all I'm asking for. My hope would be that there would never be a recall effort because the politicians would fear it and adjust their behavior accordingly. There was a recall effort last year against Mayor Cooper. I was not involved in that. I know the people that were. I think they had good intentions and their hearts were in the right place. But I recognized a year ago that it was just impossible. No matter what Cooper did, we weren't going to get him recalled. Megan Barry would not have been recalled. We had to shame her out of office. You're never going to be able to recall anyone. So why not have a system that actually works? There's been some hysteria. The opposition to this has picked up on one race, one time in 60 years, where the turnout was unbelievably low, and they're running around and saying, "Oh, well, 300 people could force someone to be recalled." Well, that might be true once every 60 years. But the reality is it is hard to recall someone. They have to do something wrong. They have to do something that offends people enough. They're not just going to recall people because they're bored. But this is what keeps politicians in check. And that's what they're afraid of. The hysteria that you're seeing is partly because of this, because no one wants to have to be subject to a recall. I don't blame them.
So currently, it would take 15% of registered Metro voters in the area where they serve to sign on. That's kind of what it would take. 15% of registered voters. If you want to, let's say you want to recall a council member, 15% of registered voters in that council district. That's what it currently takes. This, I'm reading, it says, would slash the amount of signatures needed. So we would go from 15%. What would this mean if this were to pass?
It takes it to 10%, makes it in line with the ballot initiative process. A lot of the things that we have in the charter are based on 10% of the number of registered voters or number of people who voted. That's a more common sense way of doing it anyway. But remember, just because you start gathering signatures doesn't mean that person's going to be recalled. There's going to be a vote, and they might be voted back in. It's very likely that they would. That was one of my criticisms with Cooper. I voted for John Cooper. I thought he would be more fiscally conservative than he turned out to be. If he were recall is what I had voted for him again, I don't know. Depends on who he's running against, I guess. But it's not an inherent opposition to him. So recalls will only be used sparingly. This fear that it's going to be every time we turn around is really just fear marking.
Is it true? Is it true the elected official would become a write-in candidate, forcing voters to remember who they are instead of automatically being on the ballot? Is that accurate?
It does say that. The original charter provision actually automatically put them on the ballot. They did not make them have to qualify to be back on the ballot. There's no real rationale for that. It also seems, we all see in political realm, the power of the incumbency is so strong that it's almost impossible for someone to run against a challenger. We see this in every election, whether it's state, federal, congressmen, senators. Dislodging someone is almost impossible. But make it a little bit harder. Make it so they have to go out there and run on their record and explain to the people. They already have the name recognition. They already have the identity. And if they've been good stewards, if they've been good elected officials, they won't have any trouble winning at all. I mean, truthfully, I don't think this will ever be used.
You don't think it'll ever be used. There's Dewey Branstadter's quoted as saying, I'm just quoting him from this article, this is what he said, it's going to potentially cloud the elected official's judgment, because in the back of their mind, they'll always be thinking, well, if I make this little group of people mad, all they have to do is go pull a petition, go get a recall. All they've got to get is a couple hundred signatures and they'll kick me out of office. What about that concern?
Well, that is a mischaracterization. First of all, you want in the back of every politician's mind those type of concerns anyway. I want in the back of every politician's mind, hey, if you don't act right, and that doesn't mean agree with me all the time. It means act as a good stewards, act as good responsible elected officials, then yes, I might go out and start collecting signatures against you. That's a fear they should be living with. We are a democracy. We get to vote on people. Just like they're afraid of the next election, they should be afraid they might be recalled. But it's the same fear. If John Cooper is going to have to run for mayor again in 2 years, a year, and people may vote against him because of what he did before. That apparently that fear is not too strong on him, or in him, but he still has that harboring fear. So all that Mr. Branstadter said is it applies to every politician, every day of the year, with every election year. What he's afraid of is that a politician will get elected based on a lot of promises and turn around the day after being elected and disavow all those promises and start doing something radically different. And he can just look at the citizens and say, tough luck, I'll see you in 4 years. You'll forget about it in 4 years. It prevents that sort of forgetting the people. And we all know politicians do it on both sides. They run in primary, they tell you all these things, and they get in office and they are like, no time for you. We all know that happens. And it's not until the next election that we have a chance to do anything. Well, guess what? That's going to change.
So we've gone over 2 of the 6 proposed changes. Let's go to the third one. Voters decide elected officials' benefits package. So what you're talking about is the benefits package that elected officials get. What are you wanting to change there?
All right, and I think that's a very funny way to say the voters decide. No, the voters are saying no more lifetime benefits, period. We're not deciding on a package. We're not weighing options. We're saying no more, because it is a tragedy. I ran for council a couple of years ago. I'm worried about my neighborhood. I was amazed at the number of people who came to me who thought my motivation was free lifetime benefits. I didn't even know that those were available. The number of people who thought that was the number one reason to run for Metro Council, astounding to me. second only to people who thought people ran for council to get rich. I assure you, we ought to be paying our council people more money. They are not getting rich doing this if they're honest. That is just laughable. But lifetime benefits is offensive to most people. 8 years of service, I appreciate it. We've got good council people and they're doing good work. That's what they volunteered for. That's what public service means. It's not a lifetime gravy train. And the council, every once in a while, will sit around and talk about how they want to end these benefits. But of course, they're never going to do it. No politician in the history of the world has ever voted benefits away from themselves. And so the citizens are stepping up. And the number of people who requested this was really astounding to me. The number of people who said, I appreciate what you're doing on this, but the next time you do this, you need to address these benefits. People are, and they're offended by it. And they should be. Why is there a lifetime meal ticket for being on Metro Council?
So this would end that. Now, as I'm reading something here, it says voter referendum for any benefit that elected officials receive. In other words, voters could vote to give a judge or a council member certain benefits. Is that right?
Certainly the citizens could always come back in and change the charter. If for some reason the wisdom of these provisions turned out to be not as good as we think they are, and 2 years from now they want to do another ballot initiative and go back and say, we think we should do something different. There are a lot of changes that could be made to this charter. I can't do them all at one time. The number of the new ideas that are coming in are astounding. We have pension reform issues. We've got parking in downtown issues. There are a lot. There's money that's flowing to out-of-state interest issues. We can't solve all the problems, but what we're going to start with is ending this gravy train that the Metro Council rides on. And this is something that people are very offended by. And you'll hear the argument against it is, it only makes up a small amount of the budget. Well, it's going to be smaller when we're finished.
The gravy train is what exactly? Is it lifetime health benefits? I thought they reduced it. What is the gravy train you're talking about?
The lifetime health benefits is what most people are most offended by. The reason this is written so broadly is that we figured, politicians being what they are, they would immediately come in and say, okay, we're going to discontinue the health benefits, but we're going to give them some other benefit. There'd be some other benefit that would slide in to replace it. We'll give them per diems. We'll give them some other lifetime benefit to make up for it. I think no. If you want to go run for office and you serve, and I admire people who do that, then that's your service. But the citizens aren't indebted to you forever. And there are a lot of people who feel that way. And I would say there are over 27,000 people who signed the petition the first time that had that provision in it. Guess what? There are a lot of people in this town that are against this.
So I understand. So if it passes on July 27th, then lifetime benefits are ended. So let's say lifetime health benefits would end for Metro Council members. But is it just Metro Council members? Is it also judges? Is it anybody who would it end for?
This was geared at elected officials.
So that would be judges so elected officials. And then let's say, okay, after that they decide to do what you said. We are going to, no more lifetime health care, but we're going to pass a per diem. Could they do that, or that would have to be voted on by the people? Is that what would happen if they wanted to have some new benefit?
That would have to be voted on by the people. And I'm a big fan of letting the people vote on things. I know that some people get nervous about that. There's a great article in the Wall Street Journal where one of the council people were complaining they were turning into California-style democracy. And the comeback to that was, we've got California financial problems, we might as well. That's the problem we have, is these benefits, this irresponsible behavior. The idea that someone should get lifetime benefits for 8 years of service, I think is ludicrous. And a lot of people are offended by that. If the people decide they change their mind, and another 27,000 people want to gather signatures and come back and say, maybe we should give them 10 years of benefits or 20 years of benefits, then let the people vote on it. I mean, we voted on a Titan Stadium. We voted on a transit plan. We voted on lots of things in this city, some for and some against. What are they afraid of? Well, I think it's obvious what they're afraid of. When Metro Council puts forth a ballot initiative to give themselves lifetime benefits, the people are going to vote no, and they know it. And that's what they're afraid
all right,
of.
One other thing before we go to break. We're getting through the first half here. We've got 3 of the 6. It looks like taxpayers would be, or voters would be going to the polls more. Every one of these elections costs some amount of money. I mean, I'm seeing here $800,000. But every time we go to the polls, you're talking about money that's being spent. You're also talking, you don't have huge turnout for a lot of these special elections. And so maybe it's a smaller and smaller group of people that are making these decisions. And so that's also a criticism. More of these elections that'll cost more money and fewer people participating and making these major decisions.
Well, let's look at the last referendum that we had was the transit bill. Over 100,000 people voted for that. Or you might wonder if that's a lot of people. Well, that's pretty much the number of people who voted in the August primary in the general elections in Nashville. That was actually a pretty substantial turnout. So it's really not a small group. That is something they just say, but that's not true if you actually look at the election statistic. And I went over them actually 2 nights ago because I had that sort of question in my mind. What are the turnout numbers should we expect? And there will probably be as many people vote on this ballot initiative in July that voted in August of last year, which was a pretty substantial state and federal primary and metro general election with 4 elections on it. So that is, unless you're going to go back and say those elections are not count because there are not many people voted, 100,000 people voting in a general election in Davidson County, that's a pretty substantial number. That's not bad. As it leads to the cost, well, first of all, the cost seems to be skyrocketing the less Metro likes the ballot initiative. They used to cost $500,000. They went to $800,000 last year. They snuck up to $1 million in the spring, and now they've crept back down to $800,000. They could be free. About 15 years ago, I was involved in a ballot initiative that would have put special elections like this on general election days, and Metro fought it tooth and nails. So I lay that cost at their doorstep. They absolutely could have fixed this problem 15 years ago and never had another special election. But if that's what it takes, if it takes a special election to rein in the irresponsible behavior of this government, then that will be the best money we've ever spent, because we'll get back $1 billion for every election we hold at this rate.
So, okay, we have to take a break. We've gone for the first half of the show, but we're halfway through. So there's 6 proposed changes, and what we're talking about is, of course, property tax, restrict council's ability to raise property taxes, change recall, make it easier to recall elected officials, and then do away with benefits. So those are the first 3. There are 3 others. We'll talk about those. If you want to call in, there's the number. Take a break. Be back right after this.